Hi, my name's Tom Shue, and today we're going to be talking about the Fuji X100S and combined with a Nikon SB80DX Speedlight, how we're going to take that outside and overpower the sun. Now, this is the only camera you're going to be able to do this with a Speedlight. There's other ways you can do it. You can take studio strobes and flex systems and DSLRs with lots of power or lots of speedlights and go out and do the same thing. But basically, we're going to be taking a point and shoot camera and one speedlight, and we're going to do some complex lighting situations that you just can't do with anyone else. So let's just get started. We got three different setups here. The first setup was just to show you a baseline what the camera's doing. We shot in aperture priority mode. We're at f2.8. The camera chose 1/6/40th of a second at ISO 200. The sun's coming from the back. It's kind of backlit. You can see the shadows on the ground. It's really high. This is around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So the sun is really high in the sky. So this is midday sun, not late in the afternoon. We're not doing that. We're going out when it's the toughest conditions of all, and we're going to overpower the sun with this speedlight. It's just amazing what this camera can do. So let's just get started. Here's the first shot. This was shot with the speedlight positioned over here from camera left, and you can see the shadow behind her, and it's going with the sun. You know, it looks okay, and the camera did okay. It's at 6/40th of a second, but we can't really see the sky in it. So I moved the strobe to the backside. I'm trying to get my bearings here and get the setup dialed in. So we shot at 1/800th of a second. Now, the way it works when you're trying to overpower the sun or working with strobes ever, the shutter speed, okay, that controls the ambient. So how dark you want your sky to be or how dark you want your room to be is controlled by the shutter speed. And the aperture diameter, how much light's coming in, controls the flash power. This is the secret. Since this camera has a leaf shutter lens in it, it doesn't have a problem with syncing at really high shutter speeds. I can sync up to 1/2000th of a second. Now, there is a little bit of light fall off at 2000ths, so they say 1/1600th is the top end. 1/1200th is kind of borderline, but this thing has a 3-stop ND filter built in it. So when you get to 1/1200th, you can take another 3 stops of light out just by pushing a button. This little glass filter drops in. Thing is amazing. And we'll do that a little later on. So we made this shot. We're backlit. The sun's the main light, and the strobe is the backlight. Now, the sky's dark because we're at 1/800th of a second, and we made a few shots. Now, I want you to see that there has been no post work done to these. These are raw files, and there's been nothing applied. Oh, looks like there's some clarity applied to that one, but actually there's nothing going on. Let's zoom in here. You can see that the file is pretty sharp. We're shooting autofocus mode, so this camera's holding up pretty good. Got kids running around in the water, and we're backlit here. So you can see that the water droplets are kind of sparkly. They're not sharp because we're not focused on them, but it's stopping the water at 1/800th of a second. Now, if you want to stop motion, you got to be at 1/500th. But we went past that 1/500th mark because we're not using it to stop it even better. We're using it to control the ambient. So we made a few more pictures, and you can see that these are cropped in pretty good. This is a 35mm equivalent lens, so it's pretty wide. If you want to compose your images, you're going to have to do it in post. What I'm saying is you can get a basic composition if you don't mind a wide frame, but if you want any kind of full lengths or verticals, you have to crop in post. But the good thing about this camera is if you do decide to crop in post, it's pretty sharp. At 100%, the files are sharp. So you can go ahead and zoom in and make a crop however you like, and you still got plenty of resolution to make a print, okay? Because the file holds up at 100%. So let's move to our next setup. Okay, so you saw what 1/800th did to the sun. It knocked it down pretty good. So the next setup was over at the swings. So as our reference shot, we shot in aperture priority mode. The camera shot at 1/420th of a second. We were shooting at f2.5. Okay, in aperture priority, ISO 200, and you can see it's blown out. The sun is right dead coming through the lens. Didn't flare anything because I do have a lens hood, but the sun is coming from this direction over here, and it shows 1/420th. Okay, so we want the sky to be dark. So I brought the camera. The sun is coming this way. You can see it's on her shoulders, so I put the flash to camera right, and it lit her from the backside and kind of made it cool. But the biggest thing is that we knocked the sky down from 800th, the one 1200th, we got it this dark. Now, you can see that there's been nothing applied. These are raw files. Actually, that one has been post-worked. Let's move over to this file. This is one that has not been worked on. Now, I did work on one of them to show you the difference between what you could do with a raw file. You can see that this one has been post-worked and this one has not. Okay, so the big thing to take from this is that 1200th, we have knocked down the sky pretty good. Okay, there's a couple of the shots in here in this series. There's another one that's post-worked where I changed the angle, but again we're at 1/1200th, and we're overpowering the sun with a speed light. Since the sun's at her back and it's giving her that hair light, the main light's lighting up her legs and her face. Okay, it's also from her knees is creating that shadow. Now this flash is only at a half a power. Okay, one speed light overpowering the sun is pretty impressive. It's done because of that leaf shutter lens. So let's move to our next setup. The kids got hungry and they wanted to eat some watermelon, so I cracked it open and we took our reference shot here, and this one will build from ground up. Okay, so the camera chose at f2 this time, ISO 200. It chose 1/220th, and since they're sitting in the shadow, it really blew out the sky. Okay, let's move to this one. So this is kind of where we're going to start playing with it and chimping our way to an exposure. I didn't use a light meter. I just used the back of the LCD and the histogram to figure out what I was doing. So at 1/1600th of a second at f2.5, the sky gets roughly where I want it to be as far as darkness. So then I add the flash. But I thought the sky was maybe a little bit too dark, but I opened up the f2. So I'm still trying to figure my exposure, but I introduced flash, and it's too bright. So I dial the power down on the flash, and it looks like I went from f2 to f2.5. Must have hit the dial or something like that. That wouldn't be a move I did on purpose. And then I dialed the flash down and I increased the shutter speed back to 1600 to darken the sky. And there's the final shot where I've got my flash kind of, I think I've got it where I want it. I think I move it a couple more times because I want to play with the ND filter. Yeah, there we go. So we go from 1600 at f2.5 to 1200 at f2. Okay, that looks like a pretty good exposure. But then I went to 1600 at f2. Okay, you can see the sky's here and the sky's here. It's because I drop in the ND filter and it just finishes off the image. And I took a series of them where she's enjoying her watermelon, but you can see that you cannot shoot f2.0 with a strobe. Let's look at this picture here. Look how sharp her eye is. It's a huge file. It's a raw file. And again, nothing has been applied to this image. Zero all the way down the line. Look how dark that sky is. Working with studio strobes at f2, you can't do it with a DSLR. You got to do it with a leaf shutter lens. And the ND filter is kind of like icing on the cake. It lets you shoot wide open. So that's it. If you want to play with a really cool camera, it might look like a point and shoot, but this thing is more capable than any DSLR I've ever used. Pick up the Fuji X100S and give it a try.